Hi folks, Andy here and welcome to video number 18 on this list. Not the 18th video I've done, but about the 18th in line on this retrospective. And at number 18, I've decided to put in, talking about James Herbert and his best books, I've decided to put in his 1990 novel, Creed, at number 18. This one's a weird one. It's at its heart, I think this is meant to be both satirical and comedic because it is a story of a journalist, a member of the paparazzi, um, Creed himself, who takes footage of something happening on a famous person's grave. I won't say what it is. It's quite crude, but it's also quite funny, and realizes that what he's taken is an impossible recording that shouldn't exist, and it transpires that there are otherworldly forces of the, shall we say, occult and supernatural, who aren't happy about him uh, finding them and basically want him to stop. He decides he's not going to, and then things get darker and more serious as it goes on. So it involves that weird but quite fascinating synopsis. And again, as with quite a few of his books I've talked about here, the synopsis and the concept and the story is actually really interesting. I think with Creed, the way it's written, I mean, this is the first book that Herbert wrote in the 90s, is again very different from his sledgehammer approach of the 70s and 80s. This was a step back from pure horror into something that's, to be honest, all on its own. I don't know of any other book quite like this. This is a weird one, not only within Herbert's own sort of repertoire, but in fiction in general. It's a really weird story, a really weird concept. It works on the strength of how weird it is and the fact that Herbert never seems to run out of ideas or ways in which he magnifies that weirdness and keeps the reader quite compelled to just know what is actually going on and how this is all going to get resolved. It's all very strange. Where it kind of falls down a bit is first and foremost in the fact that I think the execution is a little bit clunky. This story doesn't flow as well as I'd like it to, despite the fact that I think the story is actually quite interesting. It has a lot of sort of stop points where things are explained to the reader, and some of it just doesn't really make much sense. There's a lot of stuff in which you're asked to suspend disbelief, and I think it goes a bit too far. At the same time, it's also hard to root for the main character. I mean, Creed himself he's not a particularly likable character. He's in a situation in his life which is harsh, and the people around him aren't likable either. And the people he meets generally aren't likable. And it's kind of hard to empathise with him and want his well-being when he makes bad decisions and doesn't really listen to reason or sense a lot of the time, and it kind of spoils the flow of the story for me, at least, because when you're reading about somebody, you're in their head, or you're in their space. You kind of want them to make rational decisions and to like the person you're reading about. And here, I really struggled with it. I also think it's just got a serious lack of frights and scares. It tries to put Creed in situations which it imagines are scary, but there's very little atmosphere or tension here, mainly because A, you don't really care that much for what happens to him, but also B, it just doesn't have that same sort of fright and appeal of Herbert's earlier stories. It kind of just feels like it's a very separate entity from horror. I wouldn't classify this as horror at all. It's definitely fiction with strange elements to it, but it's certainly not a horror book. I mean, on its own merits, it's an intriguing oddity. Definitely not like anything else Herbert's wrote, and like very few other books I've ever read, really. But a curious oddity, not a bad book. Gets away by the strength of its story, even if the execution's a bit clunky. But again, not one of my favourites, and I still feel amongst Herbert's bibliography, this is still a relatively minor work.